If you've seen my most recent video, you know Wilson Combat sent me one of their Bulletproof ambidextrous safeties to replace the substandard part they'd previously shipped. I'm talking about the one I expected to be of the same quality of the previous three of that same part that I'd purchased, but wasn't. I'll be selling it on because I no longer have the need for a stainless Ambi, but multiple folks have praised the Wilson product. So I decided that while I had it, I'd see how it stacks up against other high-end offerings. The first will be the EGW Ambi. I've fitted 3 of them so far, and they've been great. I've also decided to include a Chen custom Ambi, the one Stan committed to have mid-last year. Alright, this is sort of an inside joke for anyone who's tried to get a hold of anything Chen makes. This is a permanent condition on his website these days. They're out of stock on hats, for crying out loud. I only use Chen's single-sided thumb safeties, so if Stan made an Ambi, I'd have fitted one by now. So it'll just be the Wilson and EGW. They're probably the most popular machined Ambis on the market right now. Not that there are a whole lot of options to begin with. I'll be using the following 4 criteria in this exercise to provide some structure and minimize potential subjectivity. These 4 are: what's in the box? Does the part come with everything you need to install it? Workmanship. Are there sharp edges, noticeable defects, or dimensions out of spec? Ease of installation. This is particularly important for new Bubba Smiths who've never done this sort of job. Finally, price value. Which part represents the better value for the money you spend? This is a like-for-like comparison. Both of these options are machined from solid steel, stainless in this case, and both utilize the same retention method for the right half of the part, which is a special hammer pin with a feature that rides in a T-slot in the part. Both EGW and Wilson offer wider and narrower paddle options in stainless steel and blued carbon steel. The Wilson part is the tactical version with the narrower paddles, and is more analogous to the EGW slim paddle than the full size I fitted to the gun, but beyond paddle width and shape, the two are otherwise identical. With that out of the way, I can get started with what's in the box. What's in the box? I'll begin with the EGW. You'll need to use your imagination a bit here because I don't have a new in-box part. The closest is this one I recently fitted in lieu of the Wilson. So it's got some handling marks and no original package. So just pretend the part's pristine and it's in a box. In addition to both sides of the part, the EGW includes 3 different lengths of the special hammer pin in increments of 11 thou. Not all 1911 manufacturers build their guns to the same dimensions, and having 3 different lengths guarantees you'll find one that fits your gun. EGW indicates you only get 2 hammer pins, but all of mine came with 3. Next is a sear pin with a flattened end. This type of Ambi safety rides tightly into the frame, and traditional hammer and sear pins have little domes that stick out on the right side of the gun, so those domes can cause that side of the safety to bind up. While I'm on the topic of pins, all of EGWs are a thou oversized in diameter. Oversized pins bring value by removing a little bit of the slop inherent in your gun's innards. This picture provides the perfect illustration. Take a closer look and you can see how loose the other hammer pin is in the hole. A larger diameter pin from EGW would help mitigate that. By the way, that's what she said. And that's why every gun I build or otherwise breathe on gets an EGW pin set. Here's the flattened one installed in the gun. No, I didn't feel like taking the gun completely apart. Moving on, you receive a sleeve, which is used to join the 2 halves of the part together, making the assembly feel like one solid piece of steel. EGW does this by holding ridiculously tight tolerances, less than a thou according to my mic and gauge pins. This sleeve is an EGW patented feature. Finally, EGW includes a 10-8 armorer's tool in whatever color resin the molder had extra of that day. I have 3 of the tools and they're all different colors. These things are great and I use mine all of the time. Unfortunately, they're not widely sold, so you'll wind up paying $10 in shipping for a $10 tool. So including one adds real value to the package, as opposed to a beer koozie. Although EGW has been known to toss one of those in the box on occasion, along with the decals. You always get decals. I don't recall if there are instructions in the package, but no matter since EGW has video instructions on their website. Opening the package for the Wilson part, there are the 2 halves of the Ambi and 1 special hammer pin. There's a set of instructions, but I'm not sure what they go to, because they mention an adjustment screw. Once again, what's in the box can better be described as whether the item includes all the parts necessary for installation. The Wilson simply doesn't, whereas the EGW does, along with throwing in a tool that customers will use on a regular basis. EGW is the winner in this category. By the way, returning to the topic of swag, Stan Chen is the winner by a mile because in addition to decals, he always includes a bag of peanut M&Ms. Yum. Moving on to workmanship. I haven't touched any part of the exterior on the EGW. I didn't need to. You can see it has a nice consistent satin finish, and if you could touch it, you wouldn't feel any sharp edges. It's the same with all of the EGWs I've fitted. Also, the two halves fit together right out of the box. Having purchased a bunch of parts from EGW, I wouldn't expect anything less. On the Wilson, the part has been blasted to a satin finish, but it isn't uniform from one surface to the next. The first thing I noticed when removing it from the package was this machining artifact, for lack of a better term. This could have been removed by programming a few additional passes on your CNC machine. By contrast, here's a slim paddle EGW. Also, there are a few sharp edges to contend with. The most prominent one comes from this feature they've machined into the tip of each paddle. I hate to say it, but I'm kind of at a loss what functional value it adds. Regardless, this standard of work isn't acceptable for a premium product. Finally, the two halves of the Bulletproof won't go together without filing or stoning the alignment tabs. Workmanship on the EGW is typical of what I've received from there. No visible defects or sharp edges. Unfortunately, the Wilson has both. And once again, EGW gets the win on this one. Sticking the EGW on your gun is pretty straightforward. The first step is to figure out which of the 3 hammer pins works best. Start with the longest pin and work your way downward until you find one that allows the right side to move freely or mostly freely. You may have a Goldilocks moment with one, or it may take a few optometrist evaluations to choose. Better 1, better 2. Better 1, better 2. I mark the hammer pins with different color Sharpies so I don't wind up wondering whether this is the longer one or the shorter one, or did I just take this out of the gun? Next, remove that side and then stick the left half in and cut your lug to size. From there, you could assemble everything and crack a beer. While the two halves will fit together right out of the box, that may not be the way you want to go. Remember those super tight tolerances I mentioned? It will literally take you an hour or more of finesse, brute force, tapping, and wiggling to separate those two halves. So what I do is I relieve just enough material on the tongue part of the tongue and groove feature to make separating the two sides more like eating glass than being thrown in a burning hell for eternity. Once again, all 1911s aren't the same, so there may or may not be additional fine-tuning involved. I'm a perfectionist and I want my safety to actuate and deactuate freely with no rubbing anywhere in the frame. That's not difficult, but it obviously takes a bit of time. Not a huge deal, but I've just learned to properly set my expectations and budget an afternoon for the job. As a sidebar, you may be thinking that's a shitload of time for a thumb safety, and it is compared to a single-sided one. I could stick a Chen Custom in a gun in less than an hour, and that includes getting out and putting away the tools. A Swenson-style Ambi won't take much more time, but neither is a rigid piece that rides tightly against both sides of the frame. There's just more going on with this type of Ambi, and it translates to more time. Fitting the Bulletproof part is a bit more involved. The first step would be prepping the part for use. Breaking corners, softening sharp edges, then stoning the tabs so the two halves of the part fit together. With that done, you'll need to sort the flat-ended sear pin needed for installation. The easiest way to do this is just buy one from Wilson. They're hidden in the pin section. Absent an applicable set of instructions, here's how I'd continue. Since you only have one hammer pin, that's the one you're going to need to work with. This thing is long, and at the top is a dumbbell feature that's too big in diameter and won't move in the slot. Here it is next to the EGW pin I'm using, which is 0.807 inches. The Wilson is 0.830 or 23 thousandths longer. Now just for context, here's what 23 thousandths looks like next to the pin. It's a lot. This is just for illustration. I wouldn't suggest removing 23 thousandths right off the bat. Instead, you'll need to stone or file the pin to the proper length. There are two potential pitfalls with this part of the job. First, getting the length right. You'll obviously need to remove just a bit of material at a time until the right side of the part can move freely and doesn't stick out from the side of the gun. It can be easy to get bored with the minor adjustments and just take a chunk off in one go. The risk there is removing too much, which is game over. Also, without a jig, it's really difficult to keep your cut square with a pin. I know this from personal experience. A lopsided pin could also throw a wrench into things. Once that's done, cut your lug and put it all back together. Fitting the Wilson requires not only fitting the part to the gun, but making it fit together, and includes multiple potential traps for first-time Bubba-Smiths. Installing the EGW is straightforward and it can be accomplished without modifying the part, beyond cutting the lug to size. The clear winner in this category is EGW. That leaves price and value. All of EGW's Ambis, stainless, carbon steel, full-size, slim pedals, they're all listed on their website at $149.99. Brownells has them for $134.99, so $15 cheaper. As of taping, this Wilson item is priced at $166 on their website. I checked Brownells, but they don't carry this one. In order to approach equivalence with the EGW, you'll need to add $4.95 for the sear pin and throw another $10 in for the 10/8 tool. That brings the grand total to $180.95, or $46 more than the EGW buying it through Brownells. Even if the two were identical in every other respect, the EGW clearly and objectively represents a better value than the Wilson. Tallying it up, the EGW takes the win with a clean sweep of all four criteria. I was a bit surprised at how much more expensive the Wilson Ambi was versus the EGW, which made me curious about where prices on other items shook out. So I did a quick and dirty survey of half a dozen parts, the ones that are most frequently swapped out. I looked up pricing on manufacturers' websites for carbon steel machine parts. Sorry, this was a quick exercise and I wasn't going to search for the lowest prices on everything. I'm not my grandmother. In addition to Wilson and EGW, I threw in Harrison Custom because John's stuff is every bit as good as EGW's, and he tends to be a bit spicy on prices. I also threw Chen in to highlight the disparity in prices between one-piece magwells. On the Ambi, you can see the carbon steel Wilson has a lower price than the stainless, but it's still more expensive than the EGW. This price includes the required sear pin, but not the 10/8 tool. My biggest surprise was that EGW wasn't just the lowest price on the Ambi, but they were the lowest price on every item on the list. Magwell pricing was a bit of a joke, with the Wilson Combat and Ed Brown parts being more expensive than the Chen SI by $25 and $30 respectively. The Chen has a much larger funnel, requires almost no blending on many guns, and has a nicely rounded butt, which makes it easier to conceal. And who doesn't like a nicely rounded butt? The other two require a ton of blending to be of any use and still fall short. I have a Wilson on this gun and bought an Ed Brown last year when I couldn't get a hold of a Chen. I took one look at that Brown and decided to wait. And that's the end of the video. Feel free to ponder whether you like a nice round butt. As always, thanks for watching.